My wife's affair with her boss ended our marriage, so I made sure both of them got fired from their jobs. Then the AP stole my minivan, so I made him regret it. This is the first half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided. I was also served with a protection order that stated I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids, etc., and it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. A relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order, but told me these things take time, and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter if there was any evidence, otherwise I'd be in an uphill battle if and when my wife renewed it. It only took one day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I had crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I'd watch them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me, and I reminded her of the details of the order and that I wouldn't come home until I had permission. This happened twice more than I waited down the street within the first week, so told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away. I texted her to remind her. The very next day she again didn't email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school since their school was only a few minutes away from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick up the kids and then make it to their school and work. She called furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then wanted to write me blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Follow the order. The culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. Her boyfriend was staying over, but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. Ex had to call a friend from work to pick up the kids and take them to school, and the friend found out. Of course, it got out at their work. Within a week of that, the boyfriend was fired over the relationship and my ex was suspended. By this time, I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was the boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family, and the judge was quite harsh with her over it when we settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. Part 2. Same day. This is the second part that was removed from Pro Revenge. I'll maybe fix it later there. This is the second half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. A decade ago, my then wife, now ex-wife, began a relationship with the guy and kicked me out of my house. The boyfriend was instrumental in blindsiding me and planning on how to keep me from my own kids. Ever since, I've kind of hated him. I've always been polite and respectful with boyfriend because he'd become my kid's stepdad. But I swore if I ever had the chance I'd get back at him. I figured it would be something petty, but then he'd gift-wrapped my revenge and I've been running with it for almost 3 weeks now. My kids are mostly grown now. Some in university, some in grades 11 to 12. The uni kids live with me while the high schools still go back and forth with their mom. I'm also remarried now. My wife and I each have our own vehicles, but my wife owns and insures a minivan for when we are all going somewhere together. The kids are free to use it too, as only one has a car. We only have one set of keys, so I put an AirTag on it. It's a little transponder that tracks its location. I put it on there in case the keys were lost. About 3 weeks ago, one of my older kids took the van out for the night, but ended up staying at his mom's on the couch. Around 7 a.m. the next day, another kid asked to use the van. I pinged the AirTag only to find out it was hours away in an industrial section of another town. I was quite concerned why my kid was out there. I called him up, and he was at his mom's where he said he'd be. He had no idea the van was missing. I called the police and gave them the location of the van. Within 20 minutes, they had stopped the van and the driver said he had permission to use it. Though, and behold, it's my ex-wife's boyfriend. The police weren't very interested in detaining him as it would be easier for him to just drive the van back to our town and we get sorted out here. However, it wasn't my van nor was he listed on the insurance to drive it. I asked that it be impounded. In Canada, we can't press charges, But I was adamant that this was theft and I wasn't going to let it go. Since the guy was out of town with no ride, the police did end up detaining him, probably because it was easier. I was given info for the yard where the van was impounded. Since we had the next day off, my wife and I drove out to the yard to pick it up. When we got there, I first checked for damage since it was sitting a little low. Nothing outside. When I checked inside, I found that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cable. Think seismic mitigation. Turns out, boyfriend used my wife's van to pick up stuff for work. My wife turns on her heels and walks to the office. I had to jog to keep up. She asks who has access to the van. They have the only set of keys, so my wife is assured only her or me. At this point, I get where she's going with this. I instruct them that no one accessed the van but us. I had $35 with me, so I gave it to them as a tip. They promised me that no one would get in there, and they actually moved the van into a secured area within the yard. Then, we went home without the van. We weren't even home from the long drive when I got the first text from boyfriend about getting the equipment. I explained that we left the van as there were expenses we were not going to pay. Towing, impounding fees, daily storage. I told him that he'd have to pay for them before I pick up the van. He was super mad and swore he'll pay me back. I said no way. Within an hour, I got a call from his boss. They need the equipment ASAP for a time since they had a job. I explained that it was impounded and that I won't have time to get it until next week now, and it has to be paid in advance. Boss swears up and down at me. I calmly explained that I didn't steal a vehicle to transport his stuff. Boss was having none of that, so I said I won't tolerate the abuse and hung up. Then I blocked him and his company on every platform I'm reachable on. And that was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been able to make excuses every single time boyfriend tries to arrange picking up the van, often because the kids don't have the van, so I have to drive them. Boss has gotten through a few times using other numbers and sent a ton of emails that I ignore. But I did reply and explain that both my wife and I need about 4 hours to do the round trip, and then it needs to be paid for ahead of time. And it's added up. $25 a day for secure storage plus towing and impounding fees, etc. Plus I wanted to be paid for the fuel before used as well as our travel. Boyfriend and I agreed on the standard 58 cents per kilometer, and so the boss e-transferred us for the total cost of our driving. By now the van has made one trip and her car has done 2. It came to almost $600. So on Friday it finally happened. My wife and I drove out and picked up the van. It was prepaid and ready to be released. I dropped off a 12-pack of beer at the office when I picked up the keys and went to grab the van. However, I wasn't going to transport boss and boyfriend stuff, so I arranged for it to be held at the yard at the same rate as a vehicle. Unloaded it and left right before it closed for the weekend. I got a call from boyfriend asking when he can come by with a work truck to get the stuff. I told him it's still at the impound almost 2 hours away, and the office opens Monday at 9. There was only silence on the other end, so I hung up after about 10 seconds. Through this, I've been getting vague updates from my ex, who I've got a good relationship with now. She was living with boyfriend and was clear with me that any and all the consequences were squarely on him. He's kept his job but is missing the next pay increase and is not getting his year-end bonus. Ex had their way too short-staffed to let him go, but he's in the doghouse at home and at work. No word on criminal charges for taking the van, but Crown handles that, and I'm not suing in civil court. Let's see what top commenters say. Viper Bunny says, selfish people love to shoot themselves in the foot and claim you should have been there to stop them. You reap what you sow. Another comment goes like this. I hate that the kids were caught in the middle of the pissing contest she created but gone to you for sticking it out and making her deal with the bed she made. I honestly hope the judge throws everything they can at her for weaponizing the system. I hope your attorney also uses this and anything else she happens to feed you as an ammunition as well. Good luck, and remember to document anything she says or does in writing.